tonight. I'm giving a presentation on anti-LGBTQ plus violence and the fight back. Difficult subject, depressing to research and honestly have to talk about. So this presentation is based off the articles "Time to Bash Back" by Christian, who that they just went by Christian, no last name, and then that's published by Tempest, and "Understanding the Carnage" by Keegan O'Brien, that was published by Spectre. So in part one, I want to give some context to the uptick in violence and repression we see against the queer community. In the US, the queer community is under a constant threat and is facing escalating attacks. This is occurring alongside a right-wing push to roll back the gains of the queer community in terms of social acceptance and legal rights. And I hope people don't mind that I'm using the reclaimed slur queer. I can change it if anyone's bothered by that. As to the time of the publishing of the Tempest article by Christian in 2022, 300 anti-trans bills have come before state legislatures. The bathroom bills, which prevent trans people the legal ability to use the bathroom that conforms with their gender, have erupted all over the country. And these bills create a real danger for trans people that many cis people don't even consider, like trans men who are forced to use the women's restroom being accused of being peeping toms, when in fact they're just having to follow the law, but they are men, so they present as men. In Colorado, this anti-LGBTQ plus bigotry is especially virulent. We see this in Colorado Springs, which hosts mega churches, as well as reactionary institutions such as Focus on the Family, which is an organization that's a right-wing Christian hate group, and it's famous for its opposition of queer rights, as well as legal and safe abortion. The anti-LGBTQ plus sentiment in Colorado has led to the introduction of 238 pieces of legislation at the state municipal level in 2022, which is a 600% increase from 2017, just to show like measurably things are ratcheting up. So why is this happening? Well, Trumpism, which is characterized by economic nationalism, xenophobia, and reactionary violence, has turned LGBTQ plus people, and alongside with other marginalized groups, into scapegoats for America's declining global standing. And trans people, openly queer people, and others within the LGBTQ plus community, along with women, as we've seen the ascent of feminism, have become more visible alongside the increased economic anxieties that people are facing due to late-stage capitalism. And so reactionaries view the correlation as causation, and the rise of queer people and women are leading to the degeneration of society and thus decline. And like we see that with Alex Jones saying like, oh, they're turning the frogs gay, soy boys, like any idea that like the feminization of women is like leading to our decline, right? It's not that we're in this crisis of economics. It's a crisis of masculinities to so many reactionaries. So part two, we get to the crisis facing queer people. And so like one of the first examples of crisis that we're seeing is like these drag story hours have come under attack in the US. These events, which are designed as a way to teach acceptance, have been grossly mischaracterized as a means to groom children into being queer or some other, suggestive thing. This is inherently a gross lie. The idea that queer people want to sexualize children, that queer people are intrinsically perverse and thus like sexual, and that sex must define everything we do is wrong. It's just completely ignorant. And those who have attended drag story hours know how it's a fun performance. It's not designed to be anything provocative or condemnable. The fact that we have to mount these kinds of defenses show how the Overton window has shifted and how queer people now once again need to defend our very existence. And we as the Denver Communists have participated in defending Drag Story Hour. I think it was at a place called the Flying Octopus. Somebody can correct me in chat if I'm wrong. So we've seen this kind of like reactionary hate firsthand, how weak their arguments are too, how little they believe anything they're saying. But what's interesting too is like we saw a Proud Boy at the Drag Time Story Hour that I had also seen at a Sean Fuchs protest. So they are organizing. We also see the banning of books and queer art. Books that mention queer identities, speak to queer experiences, etc., are being banned from schools, public libraries, and other institutions. Again, in the attempts to prevent grooming, whatever that means. This denies queer youth stories that speak to their problems, experiences, etc., and leads to alienation. We also see queer teachers having to hide their identity in some states, like Florida. This denies queer children role models and is clearly a burden being inflicted on like our community that doesn't impact straight or cis teachers that are somehow viewed as normal, and don't experience the same restrictions on their identity. Um, we see the opposition to queer identity becoming a Christo-fascist rallying cry. The queer community has been served as a boogeyman for the church, which is perhaps sensing its own impending irrelevancy. And especially the evangelical church has been like at the center of the attacks on queer people. We've encountered this in our own organizing against Drip Cafe, a business which has chosen to make its anti-gay stance fundamental to its identity. Drip has been roundly rejected by the community, but has been able to raise over $15,000 because of its message of hate. It's allied itself with neo-Nazis, and again, because Christo-fascists like Jamie feel it's better to stand with Nazis than it is to accept queer people. And then we've seen, queer people be the focus of fascist organizations, such as the Patriot Front, which is, a reactionary fascist organization that's made anti-LGBT hate their primary mission. For instance, on June 11th in 2022, 31 Patriot Front goons were arrested in the back of a U-Haul, hoping to use it as some kind of landing craft for them to storm a pride event, which was being attended largely by children in their own delusional form of an anti-gay D-Day. We've experienced the Patriot Front here in Denver and Boulder. I, along with Alex and Aaron from the IMT, confronted a number of them at a Sean Fuchs anti-gay concert that was in Boulder, and they've been stickering all around downtown as well. And then we've also seen direct acts of violence against the community. The first one I want to talk about briefly is the Pulse nightclub shooting, which happened on June 12th, 2016. Like, I still remember where I was when I heard about it. Like, I mean, it's horrifying to even have to read about it now. A man committed a mass shooting at the Pulse nightclub in Florida, in which he killed 49 LGBTQ plus people. This is the most horrifying breach of what should have been a queer safe space in history. Keegan O'Brien, who is the author of the Understanding the Carnage article that we read, noted the Pulse nightclub shooting marked a distinct and qualitative turning point in the scale and intensity of violence against LGBTQ people. Keegan also points out that Colorado Springs, the shooting that occurred there, builds on this grotesque horror, signaling the growth of a violent, even more confident right. All queer spaces are at risk of these type of attacks as we face an emboldened reactionary right. And that brings me to the Club Q shooting. So as mentioned earlier, the rise of Trumpism, plus the unique social and cultural conditions of Colorado Springs, created, to quote Keegan again, the social context for the horror and carnage that unfolded in Colorado. These realities are interconnected. Colorado is the inevitable outcome of this hate-fueled political ecosystem and a harbinger of the proto-fascist terror yet to come. So I don't want to discuss the shooter beyond what I have to. And that is to say that the shooter, first I want to say that in terms of the shooter's gender, he claims to be a they, them after being arrested. However, his lawyers have not referred to him as such in court or in any legal documents. And Code Pink interviewed his friends who said that this is an attempt to troll and that the shooter was never non-binary in his life prior to arrest and would constantly use homophobic rhetoric and slurs. So I refuse to fall for what is clearly an Operation Pridefall 4chan, op, which is to try to make him seem like a self-hating queer person. The shooter grew up in a right-wing troubled home. His grandfather is was a California State Assemblyman and a notorious MAGA reactionary. His parents both have struggled with substance abuse and poverty, leading them to lose custody of the shooter in his teen years, where he ended up living with his grandmother and was arrested for kidnapping her and making bomb threats while in a standoff with the police. But later charges were dropped, which a year later allowed him to purchase the gun that was used in the Club Q shooting. The shooter demonstrated right-wing reactionary beliefs, going so far as to run a neo-Nazi website, which had images like a rifle scope aiming at a pride parade. This set the stage for November 19th, 2022, where the shooter walked into Club Q and opened fire, killing Daniel David Aston, Kelly Loving, Ashley Paw, Derek Rump, and Raymond Green Vance, while wounding 24 others. The shooter was stopped by Richard Ferrero, a straight person who was an Iraq War vet, was at a queer bar for the first time to support his daughter and her friends. And a trans woman also helped stop him, and she was made famous for stomping on the shooter's face with her high heels. The horror of this event can't be overstated. It's had a chilling effect on queer people, as we feel robbed of any safe space and any place we can come together and find community, because such a safe space could quickly become a target. These terror attacks were meant to isolate and destroy the community. Lives were forever lost and altered because of this unjustifiable hate that was not just allowed to fester, but encouraged to grow until it became all consuming. So that brings me to part three, which is the fight back. The first thing that needs to be acknowledged is that the police are not, cannot, and will never be a solution. While many white, middle class, LGBT plus folk feel comfortable with the police and view them as allies, and this I'm looking at the Center and Parasol Patrol in our own orbit. This ignores BIPOC queer people who are targeted and harassed by police and often murdered. The police as an institution are reactionary, and police and corporations, for that matter, should not be a part of Pride in any capacity. We see this at events like the Queer Liberation March in New York City, which disavows any corporate pinkwashing and refuses to let law enforcement march, nor does it collaborate with the police in any capacity, instead using volunteer marshals, etc. The funding of Democrats, both by individuals and NGO groups such as the Human Rights Campaign, will only lead to minimal and performative action by politicians. The Democrats aren't our allies. They refuse to protect Roe when they had the opportunity, and they've failed marginalized communities at every turn. They're not a solution to oppression. We need a mass movement. We cannot put our hope in leaders who are often concerned with building social media brands or furthering their own personal agendas. We must reject corporate co-optation and middle-class careerism. We need to move away from accommodation and towards confrontation. This means moving towards community self-defense, tracking anti-queer social media that target our events and showing up to protect them from harassment, protesting anti-queer demonstrations, showing up at all these places that the bigots are making themselves known, like at school board meetings, and stomping up bigotry wherever it rears its head, not giving up, like what we've been doing at the Drip Cafe, showing up every month. We need to build working class solidarity, provide education that counters the false narratives of grooming, and we need community self-defense in the vein of the lesbian Avengers and the trans menace to stand up against social and state violence. Thank you.